Pay attention to the woman in the gray Toyota Camry at the gas station on Route 7 in Loudoun County, Virginia. Her name is Tiffany Lawson. She is 26 years old, a graphic designer, and she's driving home from a freelance client meeting in Leesburg. It's 9:47 p.m. on October 12, 2019. She pulls up to pump number 4, steps out of her car, and reaches for her wallet. Now, pay attention to the man approaching from the convenience store entrance. His name is Kwame Osei. He's 31 years old, a Ghanaian immigrant who arrived in the United States 7 years earlier. He works 2 jobs: warehouse inventory during the day, rideshare driving at night. Within 90 minutes, Tiffany Lawson's phone would ping from a location 40 miles away. Within 3 hours, her car would be found abandoned with the driver's door open and the engine still running. This was not a chance encounter. It was a carefully orchestrated abduction. Tiffany Lawson wasn't supposed to be on Route 7 that night. Her usual route home to Arlington took the Dulles Toll Road, but construction had closed 2 lanes. Google Maps rerouted her through back roads she didn't know. The detour added 20 minutes to her drive. Her gas light had been on for the last 15 miles. She posted on Instagram at 9:43 p.m. "Running on fumes, lol. Why does every gas station close at 9 out here?" The Shell station at Route 7 was the first one she'd seen with its lights still on. Tiffany was the youngest of 3 sisters. She'd graduated from Virginia Commonwealth University with a degree in digital media. Her apartment in Arlington was small, but hers, the first place she'd ever lived alone. Her portfolio website had been updated that same morning. She'd been building her freelance client base for 8 months, slowly transitioning away from her full-time job at a marketing firm. She wanted independence. She wanted to work for herself. That ambition would make her vulnerable. At 9:47 p.m., surveillance cameras at the Shell station captured Tiffany pulling up to pump 4. At 9:48 p.m., Kwame Osei entered the frame. He approached from the direction of the convenience store, carrying a smartphone and what appeared to be a phone charger. He walked directly toward Tiffany's car. His body language was casual, unhurried. Tiffany looked up from her phone as he approached. The cameras captured the interaction from 3 angles. Osei gestured toward his phone. Tiffany shook her head at first, then appeared to listen. Osei pointed toward the road, then back at his phone. Tiffany glanced at her own phone, then back at Osei. The conversation lasted approximately 90 seconds. At 9:50 p.m., Tiffany nodded. At 9:51 p.m., she finished pumping gas, replaced the nozzle, and got into her car. At 9:52 p.m., Kwame Osei walked around to the passenger side and got in. The Toyota Camry pulled out of the gas station and turned east on Route 7. Tiffany Lawson believed she was giving a stranded driver a ride to his broken-down vehicle 2 miles up the road. She had no way of knowing Osei's car was parked behind the gas station, fully functional. Tiffany's older sister, Vanessa Lawson, called her at 11:34 p.m. The call went straight to voicemail. Vanessa tried again at 11:41 p.m. Voicemail. At 11:58 p.m., she sent a text. "You okay? Call me." Tiffany always answered. Even when she was busy, she sent a quick text back. It was a rule their mother had established when they were teenagers, and all 3 sisters still followed it. By 12:30 a.m., Vanessa was calling their mother. By 1:15 a.m., she was calling the Arlington Police Department. The dispatcher explained that Tiffany hadn't been missing long enough to file a report. Adults had the right to not answer their phones. She should try again in the morning. Vanessa drove to Tiffany's apartment. The lights were off. Her car wasn't in its assigned parking space. At 2:47 a.m., Vanessa called the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office and explained that her sister had been driving through their jurisdiction earlier that evening. The deputy who took the call asked if Tiffany had any history of mental illness, drug use, or relationship problems. Vanessa said no to all 3. The deputy said they'd make a note of it. At 6:18 a.m. on October 13th, a Virginia state trooper on routine patrol found Tiffany Lawson's gray Toyota Camry on the shoulder of a rural road near Aldie, Virginia, 23 miles from the Shell station where she'd last been seen. The driver's door was open. The engine was running. The headlights were on. Tiffany Lawson was not inside. The trooper approached the vehicle with caution. No signs of struggle were immediately visible. The interior was neat. Tiffany's purse sat on the passenger seat, wallet inside, cash and credit cards untouched. Her phone was not in the vehicle. The trooper ran the plates. The car was registered to Tiffany Marie Lawson, age 26, Arlington, Virginia. A bolo, be on the lookout, went out at 6:34 a.m. By 7:20 a.m., Loudoun County detectives were on scene. By 8:15 a.m., Vanessa Lawson received a call asking her to come to the sheriff's office. Detective Lynn Caldwell met with Vanessa in a small interview room. Caldwell was a 12-year veteran of the department, specializing in missing persons cases. She asked Vanessa to walk through the timeline of the previous evening. Vanessa explained the Instagram post, the gas station, the unanswered calls. Caldwell asked if Tiffany had mentioned meeting anyone or going anywhere unusual. Vanessa pulled up Tiffany's Instagram. The post from 9:43 p.m. was still there. Running on fumes, LOL. Caldwell noted the timestamp. She asked Vanessa if Tiffany had any enemies, any recent breakups, any concerning interactions. Vanessa said no. Tiffany was focused on work. She didn't date much. She was careful. Caldwell assured Vanessa they were doing everything they could. Vanessa didn't sleep that day. The first break came from the Shell station surveillance footage. Detectives obtained the video at 10:22 a.m. on October 13th. The footage showed Tiffany's arrival, the gas purchase, and the encounter with Kwame Osei. The cameras captured clear images of Osei's face. At 11:15 a.m., Detective Caldwell ran facial recognition through the Virginia DMV database. The match came back at 11:33 a.m. Kwame Osei, age 31, Ghanaian national, permanent resident status, address 2847 Williamson Street, Manassas, Virginia. No criminal record in Virginia. No outstanding warrants. Caldwell pulled his driver's license photo. It matched the man in the surveillance footage. At 12:04 p.m., detectives arrived at Osei's apartment in Manassas. Osei's wife, Aka, answered the door. She was holding their 18-month-old daughter. She told detectives her husband was at work at the Amazon Fulfillment Center in Sterling. Caldwell asked when she'd last seen her husband. Aqua said he'd left for his warehouse shift at 5:30 a.m., just like every Sunday. Caldwell asked if he'd been home the previous night. Akua hesitated. She said he'd been out driving for a rideshare service. He usually worked Saturday nights. He'd come home around 2 a.m. Caldwell asked if that was normal. Akua said yes. He always worked late on Saturdays. Caldwell showed her a photo of Tiffany Lawson. Akua said she'd never seen the woman before. At 12:47 p.m., detectives arrived at the Amazon Fulfillment Center. Kwame Osei was pulled from the warehouse floor and brought to a small office. He was calm. He asked if there was a problem. Detective Caldwell showed him the surveillance footage from the Shell station. Osei watched without expression. Caldwell asked him to explain what was happening in the video. Osei was silent for 11 seconds. Then he said his English wasn't very good and he wanted a lawyer. The interview ended at 1:03 p.m. Osei was not arrested. There was no evidence of a crime. Only footage of a conversation and a woman who'd gotten into her own car of her own volition. But Detective Caldwell knew what she'd seen in those 11 seconds of silence. She knew Tiffany Lawson was in danger. The digital forensics team began working on Tiffany's phone records at 2:30 p.m. on October 13th. Her phone had last pinged a cell tower near Aldi at 10:19 p.m. on October 12th, approximately 27 minutes after she'd left the Shell station. At 10:47 p.m., the phone had been powered off or destroyed. The forensics team pulled the GPS data from her last known location. The ping placed her phone within a half-mile radius of rural farmland and scattered residential properties. At 3:15 p.m., search teams were deployed to the area. They found nothing. Meanwhile, a separate team was pulling Kwame Osei's cell phone records. His phone had pinged the same cell tower near Aldi at 10:18 p.m., 1 minute before Tiffany's final ping. At 10:52 p.m., his phone had pinged a tower near his home in Manassas. The timeline was clear. Osei had been with Tiffany when her phone went dark. He'd been back home 33 minutes later. Detective Caldwell obtained a warrant for Osei's vehicle. At 4:47 p.m., deputies located Osei's car in the parking lot of the Amazon Fulfillment Center, a white 2011 Honda Accord. The forensics team processed it on site. They found a small amount of blood on the front passenger seat. DNA testing would take weeks, but the blood was fresh. They found strands of long dark hair tangled in the passenger seatbelt. They found a woman's iPhone charging cable under the passenger seat, a rose gold braided cable that matched the one Tiffany used, according to photos on her Instagram. At 6:34 p.m., Kwame Osei was arrested and charged with abduction. He said nothing as deputies placed him in handcuffs. The interrogation began at 8:15 p.m. Osei sat across from Detective Caldwell and FBI Special Agent Thomas Rivera. Rivera had been called in because the case showed potential for interstate trafficking. Caldwell placed a photo of Tiffany Lawson on the table. She asked Osei where Tiffany was. Osei stared at the photo and said nothing. Caldwell walked through the evidence: the surveillance footage, the cell phone pings, the blood in his car, the charging cable. Osei's expression didn't change. Rivera leaned forward. He explained that cooperation could help Osei's situation. If Tiffany was still alive, every minute mattered. Osei looked at Rivera and spoke for the first time since his arrest. He said he wanted to make a deal. Caldwell asked what kind of deal. Osei said he would tell them where to find Tiffany if the prosecutor agreed not to pursue the death penalty. The interrogation stopped. Assistant District Attorney Michael Chen was contacted at 9:02 p.m. Chen reviewed the evidence and consulted with Vanessa Lawson. At 11:47 p.m., Chen agreed to the deal, contingent on Tiffany being found alive. At 12:14 a.m. on October 14th, Kwame Osei provided an address. The location was a foreclosed farmhouse on Atoka Road, approximately 12 miles from where Tiffany's car had been found. Osei claimed the property belonged to a friend who'd returned to Ghana 2 years earlier. Osei had been using the property for storage. The tactical team arrived at 1:33 a.m. The farmhouse was dark and appeared abandoned. Tall grass surrounded the structure. A detached garage sat behind the main house. Deputies cleared the main house first. It was empty. They moved to the garage. The door was padlocked from the outside. Bolt cutters removed the lock at 1:51 a.m. Detective Caldwell opened the door. The garage was dark except for a small LED lantern in the corner. Tiffany Lawson was there. She was alive. She was bound to a metal support beam with zip ties. Her mouth was covered with duct tape. She was shivering despite the warm October night. Caldwell called for medical immediately. Tiffany's eyes were wide with terror. She couldn't speak through the tape. Paramedics arrived. At 1:58 a.m., they cut the zip ties and carefully removed the tape from her mouth. Tiffany collapsed into Caldwell's arms. She was transported to Inova Loudoun Hospital at 2:14 a.m. Medical examination revealed dehydration, minor lacerations on her wrists from the zip ties, and severe psychological trauma. She had been held captive for 16 hours. Vanessa Lawson arrived at the hospital at 3:22 a.m. The reunion lasted 40 minutes before Tiffany was sedated for rest. At 8:30 a.m., Tiffany gave her statement to Detective Caldwell. She explained that Osei had approached her at the gas station, claiming his rideshare app had died and his car had broken down. He'd shown her a location on his phone, less than 2 miles away. He'd offered to pay her $20 for the ride. Tiffany had been hesitant, but Osei had seemed polite and desperate. The location was on her route home. It was a short detour. She'd agreed. Once inside her car, Osei had directed her to turn onto progressively smaller roads. When Tiffany had questioned the route, Osei had pulled a knife from his jacket pocket. He'd told her to keep driving and stay quiet. He'd directed her to the abandoned farmhouse. He'd forced her into the garage at knife point. He'd bound her to the support beam and taped her mouth. He'd told her he would come back. Then he'd left. Tiffany had spent 16 hours in darkness, listening to every sound, convinced she was going to die. The investigation expanded rapidly. Detectives obtained a warrant for Osei's apartment and digital devices. On his laptop, they found a folder containing screenshots of social media profiles, 43 different women. All were between the ages of 22 and 30. All lived in the Virginia, Maryland, and DC area. All drove compact cars. The folder was titled Targets. Tiffany Lawson's Instagram profile was among them. Detectives also found a browser history showing extensive research into isolated properties, abandoned buildings, and foreclosures in rural Virginia. Osei had been planning for months. On October 18th, the FBI located 2 additional properties tied to associates of Osei who'd left the country. Both properties were searched. Both were empty. Investigators believe Tiffany was Osei's first actual victim. His previous months of planning had been preparation, not execution. But the evidence suggested he'd been building towards something far larger. Kwame Osei was charged with abduction, use of a weapon in the commission of a felony, and attempted rape. His trial began on April 6, 2020. The defense argued that Osei had been suffering from severe depression and cultural isolation. His attorney presented evidence of untreated mental illness and claimed Osei had not intended to harm Tiffany. He'd planned to release her. The prosecution presented the folder of 43 women, the multiple properties, the months of planning. ADA Chen was direct in his closing argument. Planning is the opposite of impulse. Research is the opposite of accident. This defendant didn't snap. He hunted. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Kwame Osei was found guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 38 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Tiffany Lawson left Virginia 3 months after the trial. She moved to Portland, Oregon, where her oldest sister had relocated years earlier. She continued her graphic design work remotely, but stopped taking new clients in the Virginia area. She no longer drives alone at night. She no longer stops at gas stations in unfamiliar areas. She no longer helps strangers. In interviews, she's been clear about what she lost that night. I used to think being kind was always the right choice. Now I know kindness can be weaponized against you. Vanessa Lawson became an advocate for rideshare safety legislation. She successfully lobbied Virginia's legislature to require rideshare companies to implement real-time ride verification systems and mandatory driver check-ins. The law, known as Tiffany's Law, was signed in January 2021. The surveillance footage from the Shell station has been used in law enforcement training sessions across the country. It shows how quickly a normal interaction can become a predatory setup. It shows how a polite request can be a calculated trap. It shows how 2 minutes of kindness can lead to 16 hours of terror. Tiffany Lawson survived because Kwame Osei wanted a deal more than he wanted to disappear. She survived because Detective Caldwell moved fast enough to leverage that desperation. She survived because she was found in time. But survival is not the same as being whole. The woman who drove away from that Shell station no longer exists. The woman who emerged from that garage is someone different entirely. She's alive. That's what matters most. But some things, once taken, can never fully be returned.